democracy and the rule of law. I'm Kenneth. Meanwhile, with me on the show this evening is Barrister Obiora Ume, a respected and seasoned legal professional practicing here in Lagos. Barrister Obiora Ume, welcome you to the show this evening.
Thank you very much, and a good evening to our esteemed viewers out there.
And also with me on the show this evening is Barrister Deji Olale. Barrister Deji, welcome you to the show this evening.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be on the show once again.
All right. So without much ado, look at the issue of the new practice direction on non-custodial sentencing by the Chief Judge of Lagos State. Of course, we know that the Lagos State has always been at the front burner for some of these innovations, and this is one of such. So what is this new practice direction on non-custodial all about?
Well, the new practice direction is a welcome development in the administration of criminal justice in Lagos State. It's clear, like you mentioned, that Lagos State has always been a pathfinder, and this particular practice direction will go a long way to solve a lot of problems and challenges in criminal justice administration. For example, before now, the Ikoyi prison, now Ikoyi Custodial Correctional Center, was built to house 800 inmates, but has presently over 3,000. Same thing applies to Rikri and other custodial centers across the state. Now, we have also observed before now that on similar offenses, judges give different prison terms on similar offenses. The same thing applies to magistrates, meaning that a judge may, for a particular offense, give 7 years imprisonment, another judge will give 3 years, another will give 21 years, and even some will give us, especially where there is no maximum punishment applicable. But this particular practice direction will standardize everything, so that what A gets for similar offenses is the same thing that will go across board. Secondly, the new practice direction will also project Lagos State among the states in the world that apply international best practices, because the days are gone in many countries when confinement in institutions like correctional centers was the norm. What obtains presently in many countries of the world is non-custodial sentencing for categories of offenses. In place of confinement, they issue probation, they give order for restitution or community service or such other punishments that will be in accord with international best practices. We recall that presently in Nigeria, before this new innovation, which is commendable, highly commendable, it is called that all categories of offenders are confined in institutions, and what happens? They learn new tricks. They get themselves in learning new techniques of committing crime. So instead of getting to the prisons for reformation, they come out more hardened with more ways of committing crime. We know that when Nigerian government changed the nomenclature from prison to correctional centers, what it means is that those that are going to those places will be reformed. And what does reformation imply? They will be given opportunity to change, given facilities to be useful to themselves and to the society at large. I'm aware that presently some of the inmates are allowed to engage in skill acquisition and educational facilities. I know a young man who was there and has finished his first degree in institution there through this Open University program. But see, what we find is that the inmates are not actually before now be rehabilitated. That is the sad commentary. And then we discover also that from the information available from United States Information Service on countries and the way they treat offenders in prison, Nigeria and many other African countries got 5. 5 is the basic, which is that the institutions pose threats to the lives of the inmates. Tanzania, Egypt, and some other African countries came under that category. The best are those that got 1. America is in that category. Finland, where Simon Ekpa was recently sentenced, is also on 1. These are countries that realize the value of human lives, that those that are in prison are not supposed to be reduced to subhuman beings. They are still entitled to rehabilitation so that they become better individuals in future. We discover that with what has been going on in Nigeria so far, some come out with venom. And how do you explain the situation whereby someone that was just released from custody within a very short period of time engages in another criminality? It means that he has gone there not to be a better person, he has not been reformed, but has, gotten worse off. So what Lagos State government has done is beautifully good.
Right.
Judges will now know that there are parameters within which they can give judgment and impose sentences.
Right. But Mr. Deji, what do you think will be the benefit of this new innovation on non-custodial sentencing?
Yeah, thank you very much. I think over the years, for almost several decades now, we have been battling with the problem of the awaiting trial in most of our prisons, in most of our correction centers. Quite just like my good brother said, quite a large number of inmates in our prison don't have the basic facilities that will even make them to live any good or useful life. And the conditions under which those prisons are kept, the conditions of the prisons are such that they are so dehumanizing. And many of those you find in this prison are people who are waiting trials for minor offenses that ought to have been settled, or maybe for some unfortunate situation they could not take care of those issues at the police level, and some of the charges also are compounded by the police. There are a lot of those cases that ought not to be to lead anyone to prison. Ordinarily, maybe minor assault or minor theft, and some of these incidents. And over the years, you find that many of them are kept in prison for decades. There was one I was involved in for almost 15 years, just because they fought, and it happens to have maybe they had a clash with a woman who was a wife of a superintendent of police, and they made sure that that person was kept in Ikoyi prison for many years, 15 good years, awaiting trial. The files was not protected. They said they had forwarded it to DPP. There was no file sent to DPP for over the years, until we came in to assist this person to get out. There was another murder case. He was accused of murder. Dead body was found in the house of a chief in Ikorodu. Some land grabbers arranged and put a dead body just because they wanted to take over the entire village. And of course, the man spent almost about 8 years in Kirikiri awaiting trial. At the end of the day, there was no autopsy. There was the corpse could not be found, and this man was not charged to court. He was kept for case of murder for almost 8 years until we were able to get him out. So we have a lot of these kind of cases that are in the prison. Most of them in the prison. Some of them even serve the sentence. They serve more than the sentence that they will have been imposed on them.
Yeah, but how would the non-custodial sentence?
Yes, because this particular non-custodial now will give opportunity for probation, for people to be released depending on the nature of their allegation or the cases against them. Of course, you know that in cases like Ms. Demiano, where minor traffic offences, minor crimes, obviously some of those sentences, you don't need to keep them in prison for so long until their cases are heard. And even after sentence, it gives opportunity for judges to apply some discretion in handling most of these kind of criminal cases that are not heinous, or what we call mala insi or mala prohibitum. Depending on the nature of that offence, you can now determine what to do, not necessarily confining the people into prison for the period of time of those sentence. Now it gives more social more opportunity to judges to be able to look at the cases more practically.
Yeah, but people argue that in a country where you do not have tight database,
yes,
you know, not confining them might be very, very difficult, where people can...
Yes, of course there are challenges involved. Now, one of the basic challenges, and I think the government should take note of some of these things, is that you require a lot of training of personnel to be able to do this non-custodial kind of sentencing. Like all our social security, social welfare units will have to be involved. There is a need to train psychologists, there is a need to train criminologists, there is a need to, you know, develop experts who will be able to handle some of these inmates, or those of them who have been sentenced, who are going to be allowed to serve this sentence other than in the prison houses. So there has to be constant counseling. There has to be facilities where they can report. There has to be proper engagement and retraining or counseling of some of these people. Otherwise, if we do it the way we have always been doing in Nigeria, just allow them to serve sentence maybe outside the prison and all of that, we may have problem of bringing criminals back into the society without them serving their sentence. So I think that's one area that government will have to provide some social facilities for them, either for training, to engage them in all kinds of skill acquisition while they are still serving the sentence. But the only difference is that they may not be in prison custody while they are awaiting the trial of their case. It will also relieve the problem of
are they going to be waiting? Does this is it going to be a waiting trial, or people who they have pleaded guilty and they have been sentenced, maybe their offense is misdemeanor? Is there no dichotomy between awaiting trial and those whose sentencing has been passed?
It is those who have been sentenced.
Okay, not those awaiting trial.
Yes, those who have been sentenced.
Yes, the non-custodial practice direction is exclusively meant for those whose trials have been concluded and sentenced imposed either by the High Court or the Magistrate Courts, which so that is the sentencing, the punishment that is in issue. For those that are waiting trial, it does not necessarily apply to them. It applies strictly to those who have been sentenced by the court. And the essence of it is one, to decongest the prisons. The prisons are already overcrowded. And like the Chief Judge of Lagos had also lamented, the resources for maintaining the prisons in terms of feeding, welfare, medicals, is
very lean.
Yes, very lean. Now, of course, this approach now, the non-custodial, is what obtains in many other jurisdictions.
Yeah, that have enough database too to monitor this.
Yes, and the Lagos State government has already, put in place, measures to ensure that those who will be given non-custodial sentences are properly followed up. Because he emphasized that there's need for rehabilitation, correction, which is to say that the person will at the end of the day be a better person to himself and the society at large, not necessarily confinement. And that has brought to fore once more the philosophy behind sentencing. Is it meant as a deterrent? Is it reformative? And other theories behind sentencing guidelines.
Yeah, but critics may argue that the non-custodial sentencing could encourage crime by making punishment appear lenient. So what do you think?
Yeah. Now, the issue of non-custodial making criminals to be bold to go about their nefarious activities, believing that at the end they may not be confined to prison, does not follow. One, you discover that when people are confined in custody, the present institutions we have are breeding ground for more advanced, sophisticated crimes, because people gather together, they share their views, even in the institutions there, they tell those awaiting trial how to defend themselves, what to say when the case come up for trial, and so on. They invent, a very convincing version of what may have happened.
Yeah, but I've seen so many people who are being confined, and it seems that they get inspiration. Even some of our leaders who were confined at a point, they wrote books there, they got inspired. Some of them became pastors, some of them became engulfed by the Holy Spirit because they had the time to reflect.
It depends on individual. There was recently a young man that were defending his matter in court, and then he had to send urgent message to the mother that he was to be initiated into a court at the prisons, and it was scheduled for 12 midnight on a particular Saturday. When the messenger came across to the mother came to us, and we did a letter addressed to the officials of the Custodial Center that this person presently in your custody had been penciled down for initiation into a court in the prisons, and that we do not want it to happen. We took the letter there, it was delivered, and it intervened. Now, assuming he did not cry out, he would have been initiated, and we know the consequences of such initiations. So we have tried the confinement over the years, and it has not made our justice system better off. Let us try the non-custodial, but it does not mean that all offences will attract non-custodial sentencing. No. It has to do with the nature of the alleged crime. Cases of kidnapping, cases of armed robbery, murder, and all those things that attract serious punishment will not be among the category of offences that the offenders upon conviction will be given non-custodial. There are minor offences that will be classified among those that will be non-custodial, and that is why the practice direction is a clear guide.
Yeah, but we had that before. Even we had that non-custodial even in the
old criminal procedure act.
So yes. What is so different between this and what we had previously?
The difference is that because these things were not being implemented.
Because no offences that actually go to the prison. Some are fined, some are given
these things are not being implemented properly. So what Lagos State has come out to do is to join the international community in international best practices, which is the trending thing. Now, another area that we expect the Lagos State government to do something about, because we've had an opportunity to have discussed that with the Attorney General of Lagos State in one of the sessions he had with the General Bar Association Ikeja branch, is the issue of bail. When people are charged to court on bailable offences, the bail conditions that are usually imposed by the courts are such that makes it very difficult for the suspect, the defendant, to go home the same day it was arraigned. You just oppose that with what happens in yesteryears in the 90s, in the 80s and 90s, those days Once people are arraigned in court that very day, they go home. And in those years, the issue of jumping bail was not rampant because they were not terrified by conditions that appear threatening. But by the time a person spends months or years battling to get bail, by the time he comes out, he will start asking himself, having taken so much and so long a time to just get bail, what will happen at the end of the day? And that tempts some of them to run away. It's not good for our justice system. So the Lagos State government, as a trailblazer, as a pathfinder, ought to do something about the issue of bail. One of them is the issue of imposition of tax. That tax must be paid by the sureties. Now, if you are saying yes, the taxpayers need to stand fine. But you discover that when the taxpayer comes with his tax evidence of tax payment, they will see that the tax you'll be paying is not sufficient for you to stand. They will now do another assessment for the sureties to go and pay more. Those things are not good for our justice system, and that will also contribute to overcrowding in the prisons.
Well,
so the issue of ensuring that bailable offences are made bailable by the conditions that are not too onerous. The Attorney General of Lagos State gave his word that the Lagos State government will do something about that, and I think it needs to be done.
Right.
Because it's one of the clocks in the administration of criminal justice system in Lagos State.
Right.
Yes, I wanted to also add that while we are still talking about these non-custodial sentences, it is very important that we also consider the aspect, apart from the amenities that we have said before, the infrastructures that needs to be put in place. Obviously, there should be what is called the a mental health policy that should be in place, because you find that behind every crime there are mental health issues.
Yeah.
Behind every crime, and most of the idea of recidivists, when you talk about those who commit crime often over and over again, it has to do with their mental state. We do not have a very good and effective mental health policy in Nigeria today, particularly in Lagos State, to complement this non-custodial sentencing that we are looking at. Otherwise, we may have situations where the non-custodial practice and procedure will not be effective.
All right.
Rather, it will create more problem than normal.
All right.
Then I also want to say that the final thing I also want to say about it, before we probably move away from it, is the fact that we also hope that the application of this particular system will not be for the rich only and the highly placed politicians. All right, it will not be a case. There will be no corruption involved in the selection of who should enjoy this custodial and non-custodial measure, because everything we do in Nigeria is corrupted, and we need to also look at the possibility of ensuring that our magistrates and all those who will be in charge of this non-custodial do not apply it based on sentiment, based on social class or status.
You mean discretion?
Yes, in the exercise of their discretion.
Okay, but we want to look at, is the necessary infrastructure available? Because you've talked about, during your conversation, you talked about the issue of over congestion in the prisons.
Yes.
And of course, some people argue that the solution would have been to perhaps build more prisons, right? Or improve the facilities in the existing correctional centers. Of course, we've seen that there has not been a lot of infrastructural change over the years in some of these correctional centers,
yes.
And that is why we have this congestion. And instead of being a place for reformation, it's in fact it helps in hardening those who are there.
Yes.
So some people will argue that improving those infrastructure would have been the way out. You know, not trying to, you know, people who ordinarily should have been there, you're trying to say they shouldn't go there because we don't have enough infrastructure to hold or house them. because they are supposed to be there in order for them to reflect for their crime. We are saying that the society should not bear the burden by putting them back into the society after they have committed offenses. Some people have said that infrastructure, overhauling the criminal justice infrastructure would have been better.
Yeah, well, that argument, does not really stand. If you look at the whole issue, from the standpoint of purposive criminal justice administration, what does the state stand to gain by clamping people into the prisons?
Yeah, but if sending the prison is for reformation, not for punishment.
No. We're talking of the non-custodial. The prison itself is supposed to be correctional. Now, if you look at the global village is the world. In Canada, in America, in Italy, and other places, US and UK included, they've adopted the policy that we are just, embracing in 2025 over the years. And what do? For minor offenses, traffic offenses, minor offenses, they don't need to confine anybody.
Yeah, but even as we have now, minor offenses are not being confined.
They do the trial, and upon conviction, they can issue a probation 6 months. If within 6 months, the same person commits the same offense, of course they have their information, they have the data which Lagos State government is putting in place. That will be done. Yeah, but they also have suspended sentence.
Yeah, but I just want to say that as currently as we have before this practice direction, for traffic offenses, they do not go into custody. They plead and they pay fine and they let them go.
It's not in all cases.
In all cases, they have
discovered that we have a challenge in the area of this environmental enforcement.
Yeah, even in the environmental, they have
most of them
take people to custody.
They take them to custody. Most of them from where they commit the offense, they are taken to mobile court, and from the mobile court to prison.
Yes.
And a lot of them are in prison as we are talking now.
So the way out is, what does the society needs? The society needs the contribution of those individuals to enhance the welfare of the nation.
Yeah, because
and confining them in those places and getting them hardened in the process does not do the society any good. And what government of Lagos State has come out to do now is to create an avenue where these people will be rehabilitated, they will be reformed, they will be made better individuals even though they are not in custody. And let's look at it the other way.
So when you say making them hardened, is that not an indictment on the system we have in place where the correctional centers are a breeding ground for criminals instead of being a reformatory ground for them?
There is no how.
If you call it indictment, that's even an understatement. Because if you go to the correctional centers, what you see there, you shed tears.
The present condition of our correctional centers is too bad.
Yes.
It's not conducive for any reformation.
I've mentioned earlier that when a survey was carried out the world over, the official assessment on Nigeria is 5. And 5 is that the institutions are threatening the lives of the inmates. I have the records. So if the inmates are threatening the life of the inmates, will you want such a thing to continue? I know you will not want such a thing to continue. So what is constant in life is change. There's a change. And another area is that with Lagos State, by really this in the country, then they will put in place such measures that those who are convicted for lesser offenses will be corrected, they will be rehabilitated, and at the end of the day, they will be useful to the society at large. And of course, the issue that has been there over the time is criminals. What causes them to commit crime? Is it society, or is the issue of criminality inborn? Criminologists have been, at daggers drawn, each trying to prove the causes or otherwise of criminality. Some will tell you that it's genetic, that's inherited from parents, that those whose fathers or grandparents were criminals will end up being criminals. There are some that have stuck to their gun that that is the cause of crime. Others will tell you on the other side of the divide that is the environment that breeds criminals, and that places where some people are brought up are actually contributory factors to what they become tomorrow. And others will still tell you that it is economic dictation, circumstances, that it is hardship that drives some people to commit crime. Some will also tell you that criminality has a lot to do with the mental health of the persons concerned. Up to today, there is no consensus as to what actually causes crime. Some say it is a result of peer pressure, having people that moving along with people that commit crime, the deviants, and all that. Of course, those that are in the school of the learning theory will tell you that that crime is learned through association. Okay. But what I know is that in Nigeria, we have not been very fortunate to have good leaders, because if 98% of Nigerian youths are fully employed, engaged in productive services, they go to work every day, they come back, you will discover that less crime will be prevalent in society. You recall that during the military era in Lagos, when Buba Marwa was the military administrator of Lagos State, there were a lot of miscreants, area boys and hoodlums that caused criminality and disorder in the society. And what he did was introduce what was then termed Operation Sweep. And they went out, they swept together all those area boys and miscreants and engaged them in productive services. What did they do? Road maintenance. They would take them in the morning, they would do roads. Some of them will carry blocks, cement, mist, and all this. They work from morning till evening, and they are paid. At night, they will be tired. They won't go out looking for one criminal thing to do or the other.
All right.
And in the process, Lagos was sanitized.
All right. Barrister Deji,
yes.
I hope that the infrastructure
yes.
to make this policy work would also be looked into.
Yes.
Because it has been held in several cases that justice, criminal justice, is a three-way traffic. Justice for the victim.
Yeah.
Justice for the accused.
Yes.
And justice for the society.
Yes.
Throwing people out there through this non-custodial sentence practice direction,
yes.
who ordinarily ought to be in confinement, because we do not have adequate
yes.
facility to house them,
follow them up.
Indiscriminately, without also looking at the society in which you are bringing them back without information.
Yes.
So we hope that as this practice direction is kicking off, that there will also be adequate facility, supervision, and the necessary manpower to ensure that these people who you have thrown back into the society do not pose danger,
a threat
to.
Now that's why I said earlier on that. That's why I said at the beginning that the rider here is whether or not we are ready for this particular non-custodian practice that we want to introduce, because it requires a lot of funding.
Sorry, before you go on,
yes,
because Barrister Obia mentioned the international best practices in
Yes.
the UK,
Yes.
Canada.
Yes.
But let's not forget that all of those places, they have social
organized system.
security,
Yes. They have organized-
CCTV
Yes.
everywhere.
Social
They are
security.
every activities of everybody. They know the number
Social
of people
welfare.
who are in their country.
Yes.
They know when you move
And it's
in and
easy
you
to
move
track.
out.
It's
It's
easy
easy
to
to
track
track,
where
which
the
we
people
do not
are at any
have in
particular time.
Nigeria.
Yes.
You can
So
continue.
that's why I said earlier on that a lot of infrastructure will have to be put in place before we can be talking about this non-custodial sentence. It's a good penal system to allow for suspended sentences, to allow for probation, to allow for social services instead of the imprisonment, terms of imprisonment, strictly speaking. It's good. But the problem is whether or not we have in place the infrastructure, the facility, the centers where these people can be sent to, either for psychological assessment or for psychiatric test or for mental counseling or for even development of certain skills for them and all of that. All those things are very, very important. They are things that goes with non-custodial sentences in most other countries, most other climes. But we don't seem to have it in place right now. And government will require a lot of funding for even to raise the personnel, the kind of personnel needed right now to be able to cope with the number of those who will fall into this particular non-custodial sentencing. We don't have that personnel, and those personnel need special training in different areas of criminology, different areas of psychiatry, psychology, social welfare and all of that. Does the state have the money to train and equip people? The answer to me is no. We are still having a lot of challenges even in the maintenance of the social system and the welfare policy for even the people in Lagos. And then to now add up
for the people who have not committed any offence.
Those who have not committed offence yet. But we are now creating a situation that will allow criminals to go off. That's the way it looks to some people. And we also need to be cautious in that. Then also I want to mention this aspect too, that if we are talking about decongesting our correctional centers, I don't think this custodial thing will help us essentially. I think what will help us is to prevent many of these cases that ought not to be an issue coming into the custodial procedural system of our criminal justice. What do I mean? There should be a way of assessing cases.
Investigation by the police before taking in court.
Looking at the investigation of the police, all those cases they are pushing into awaiting trial, overnight cases and all of many of them ought not to be overnight cases. Many of them require special unit in the Ministry of Justice, people who will sit down and look at some of them are social contracts, breakdown of contract. Some of them, you give me money, I did a job, you are not satisfied with it, police is invited to recover money and all those kind of cases, and they push it as OBT or 419 and all of that. You find a lot of all those cases, people fought, two people fought in the family, husband and wife quarrel, and they push it into awaiting trial and all of that. When we are able to manage that, I believe that we will not even have this problem of custodial sentencing.
Right.
I want to chip in a few things on this. Number one, I commend the Lagos State government because if you look at what they've done so far, like the very fears expressed by my good brother and friend concerning cases, you discover that in Lagos State, and I'm not aware of other states where this happens, you take any matter to the court, especially the lower court, the magistrate court, there is a legal officer from the Ministry of Justice, DPP's office in particular, that will scrutinize the charge. And if it does not disclose crime, so to say, they will refuse to accept it, and that's the end of the matter. Which means that already before now, they've put in place the methodology for screening cases that are to come to court, and some they said, I'm aware of some that they took there, and by the time they look and say, no, this does not disclose any crime, this is a social conflict, go. And that will be the end of the matter. That is one. Two, they already have in place data for people who have been arraigned in court for one offense or the other. When a person is brought to court for arraignment, they will take the fingerprints and the information of that person as into their system.
In magistrate court?
In magistrate court?
Yes.
Fingerprint?
I'm not
Yes,
aware.
that happens. Even
this
for
Lagos.
bail. Yes, even for people to stand bail, you need to go and they will take you.
Since when have they started? Because I've been there a couple of
What
times.
I'm telling you, I'm not guessing. I'm telling you of what I've witnessed. I know it. They have that data.
In this upper
You
court.
cannot even stand shorty if by the time you put your fingerprint and it turns out that you stood shorty before. Go and make inquiries. I'm telling you what I know.
Which of the courts?
That would be a new practice.
Which of the courts?
It's a place at the magistrate court. There's a place that in the first.
Which of the magistrate court? There are so many of them all over Lagos.
Go to the one at Ogba.
Okay, the one at Ogba.
Yes, you go there. What I'm telling you.
That's an innovation if they are doing it.
It didn't just start.
But I don't know of Surulere. There's no such thing in Surulere. There's no such thing in Yaba.
Now, I'm telling you what I've witnessed. If they bring in any suspect,
Tinubu also, there's no such
they
thing.
will go, and the first point of call is the office of DPP in the court premises. They will scrutinize the charge.
Yes.
When that has been done, they will move the suspect to a place where they will take their biometrics. And when that is done, they will even take their pictures.
I think that's a new innovation.
These things are things
But if it is so, how come we are still having large number of awaiting trials in Lagos State? In the last 1 year.
Now, with that
How
in
come?
place, you will also be made to know that Lagos State government has partnered with some organizations and foundations on this very non-custodial decision. I wouldn't want to mention those names on the air, but they have already made preparations for this. So I believe the state is ready. There is no system that is perfect. What is a point that is a journey of 1,000 miles start with 12 steps.
All right.
The Lagos State government started with this step, and I believe that with time, those that have
where are the doctors? Where are the doctors? Where are the psychologists employed? Look, man, you are doing a good
I'm sure that
promo for Lagos State government, no doubt.
So,
You are doing
promo?
yes, you are doing a good promo for this.
Promo. That's
what you are
what
doing.
they've done.
Look, the practical thing,
what is good.
the practical thing that we have on the ground now. Where are those facilities where people can go to? Those who are released from this custodial, where can they do suspended sentence? How do they monitor them? How do you follow up somebody you have
convict and say and keep it
suspended? We're sure Mr. Barsume is well abreast of this, and he has the ears of the Chief Judge of Lagos State, so perhaps he will take some of these our concerns to him.